you get your guinea pig?
Happens to be the best damn candidate out of 600 volunteers.
A secret experiment gave one man the strength of 100.
For the rest of the world, he's just codenamed Captain America.
And the power to save millions.
The Jerrys have an experimental rocket ready to fire at a target somewhere in the United States.
Only he could defeat a superhuman madman.
They got a fella called the Red Skull heading up their outfit.
But saving the world left him trapped in an icy grave until fate released him to finish a battle started decades ago. Ronnie Cox, Kim Gillingham, Scott Paulin as the Red Skull, and Matt Salinger as the Marvel Comics hero, Captain America.
The reason we're talking about the 90s Captain America movie for this video is because this week Deadpool and Wolverine gets released, so I thought it would be appropriate to talk about another comic book movie. Probably should have done this for July 4th in retrospect, because Captain America and whatnot, but here we are. Frozen in ice since World War II, Captain America is revived and must save the President of the United States from an enemy with a tie to his past. I mean, yeah, that pretty much happens in the movie, but it kind of negates all the filler that happens in it, but yeah, I mean, that is a fairly accurate description. Aside from a couple of exceptions like Avengers Endgame and stuff like that, I'm not really into the current wave of superhero movies, mainly because of fatigue. I'm one of those people that says, there are way too many superhero movies. They put out like 8 of them a year. I get really burnt out on these. Obviously, not all of them are bad. There are a couple of diamonds in the rough here and there. And I'm actually looking forward to Deadpool 3, even though I do think that Deadpool kind of helped spark the current wave of like every movie, whether it's an action-adventure movie or sci-fi movie, every blockbuster that comes out now has to have this obnoxious, self-aware, wink-wink, nudge-nudge kind of humor. I still don't mind it with Deadpool because that's at least what stuff like Deadpool and Guardians of the Galaxy are at least known for. But when every other superhero movie does it, or just any other like big budget blockbuster does it, that gets really old to me. And obviously, bad superhero movies are not exclusive to just this decade. Obviously, there's a new specific flavor of bad, but there have been a lot of bad superhero movies and shows throughout the years, and we've talked about a couple of them here. We've talked about Supergirl last year. Before that, we talked about Catwoman with Halle Berry, and I did a whole marathon video talking about a couple different bad summer blockbusters, and a few of them were superhero movies like Blade Trinity and Elektra and Daredevil and a bunch of crap like that. Shortly after the success of the 80s Superman and 80s Batman, then they started to branch out and trying to make more of these Marvel and DC superhero characters into movies. Some theatrical, some straight-to-video garbage. And now we're definitely talking about some vintage crap with stuff like the Fantastic Four from Roger Corman and Supergirl, because this is the 90s Captain America movie, and dear God, this movie is terrible. Admittedly, some of it is so bad it's funny, as we'll get into in a bit, but oh God, yeah, this is definitely nowhere near as good as the 2011 Captain America. Or before we begin, I just want to add this as well. I see a bunch of people say that they don't like Superman because he's more of a symbol than a character, and while I definitely understand that, that's more or less how I feel about Captain America, more specifically with the Silver Age comics. All the comics back in the day pretty much just made Captain America a big Boy Scout in a costume. I feel like as the years have gone on and they made more comics about him, they made him a little bit more interesting beyond just being a guy who wears the red, white, and blue and throws a fucking disc around. This movie, on the other hand, it tries to lean more into the comics, so it feels like it tries to treat this very silly imagery as seriously as possible, and the end result is a movie that's unintentionally hilarious. In full disclosure, I know that there's a crappy Captain America movie from the 70s. I tried finding it, but I couldn't find it in time, so instead we're just going to talk about this one specifically. So, if there's anything to give this movie credit for, it does try to stick to the source material in the backstory of the characters. You have a kid that was taken away by Nazis and experimented on, and he was turned into the Red Skull. And weirdly enough, the movie starts with the kid in like a cage, and he looks around and you see these like experiments that these Nazi Josef Mengele types are doing. And it looks like stop motion. It looks like something out of fucking Pee-wee's Playhouse. But obviously they take that kid and years later he turns into the Red Skull, but that'll come back into play a little bit later. Then we jump over to Steve Rogers, who, you know, he's a guy who has some kind of disability, and you could tell because the actor walks around with a limp. He's going to be going away to be part of some military experiment so they could turn him into the superhuman that could take on the damn Nazi enemy. And, well, his girlfriend isn't there, so he has to step away from his going away party to see his girlfriend, who cries that she really wants to see him.
I'm sorry. It's just that I love you. And I can't imagine not knowing what you're doing or where you're going.
Which is why she wasn't at his going away party and he had to run away to a beach to go see her. And when he eventually leaves, there's this really awkward shot of her face that you can clearly tell they filmed at night, but they were blasting light on her to make it look like it was still the same, to give it some continuity. Anyway, he goes away, he's part of this big military experiment, and they sit him up in a chair, and then they throw a switch, and he jolts around like he's being jolted with energy. Then they quickly rush him out of there because it turns out there are some Nazi spies. Got Nazis as the bad guys, but these guys are so cartoonish, they feel like they're out of a fucking Mel Brooks movie. The guy goes to give one of the doctors a handshake, and he then just whips out a gun and just screams Heil Hitler like he's in a comedy movie.
Remarkable work, Dr. Naselli. Congratulations. Heil Hitler!
And believe me, this is all just the beginning of the funny shit, because then it's like, they grab him and they're like, quick, Cap, we gotta get out of here. We gotta take you so that you can fight the Nazi enemy. And they get into a plane, and out of nowhere, he just has the costume with him, like, and he's wearing it over like a green military jacket, and he has like an army helmet on. It is the funniest looking visual because everyone's just looking at him so casually while he's wearing this silly looking outfit, which, yes, when they eventually take off the helmet, he has fucking little wings on his helmet. It's the stupidest looking shit. It's like with Supergirl, there's no explanation for where the costume comes from. Like I said in my review of Supergirl, even the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie explains some shit like that.
Well, what do you think?
Whatever, he's Captain America now, he has stupid wings on his head, and he throws around his shield, takes out some Nazi bastards, and here he comes across the Red Skull, who... he looked so bad. He looked ridiculous. He looked like fucking Skeletor in the live-action He-Man and the Masters of the Universe movie. It's that bad. Anyway, Red Skull straps him to a rocket and launches him up, and, well, then this becomes a very important plot beat. They establish there's a little kid in Washington, and we know this because there's a shot of the White House, and they feel the need to put in text at the bottom, Washington, D.C., They do this a lot throughout the movie. Every time there's an exterior shot, they have to put where you are on screen. And it's like, you see like the Vatican in Rome, and they still feel the need to put Rome at the bottom of the screen.
I want President Kimball's schedule for the next week, down to the second.
They show Alaska twice, and it's the same shot both times, and both times they show it, they still feel the need to put Alaska. Do that once, okay, that's totally fine. The fact that they did it twice, when it's the exact same shot, you don't need to do that. Anyway, kid in Washington, he's talking with his mom, and he says that he wants to become president someday. The kid sneaks out, and he starts to take pictures of the White House, and then the rocket that Captain America is strapped to blows on past him, and he manages to take a picture of it. Not only does that kid grow up to become the president many decades later, and not only does he still remember him from the picture, But later on, when they actually have like a one-on-one conversation with each other, Captain America apparently saw him.
You mean you were the little boy? I've been waiting for this moment for a long time.
While he was strapped onto the rocket, God knows how many miles up in the air, he was apparently able to see him. The rocket ends up crashing into a huge snowbank in the middle of Alaska, so Captain America gets frozen. Many decades go by, and the kid eventually does become president, and his like right-hand man is working with the Red Skull, because the Red Skull has some shadowy cabal of like super powerful elites that are trying to pull the strings and take over the world. He has like a facelift, and he still has like a bunch of shit on his face. He looks like somebody trying to do a mixture of Freddy Krueger and a business executive, and that shit wasn't working, man.
You, my friends, are statesmen, generals, captains of industry. I am only a humble businessman who dabbles in science.
The guy who's like the right-hand man to the president, he's played by the dad from A Christmas Story, which was just kind of funny in and of itself.
Do you want to make a deal?
Yes, sir. Yes, of course I do, sir.
Anyway, Captain America eventually gets unfrozen by a bunch of scientists who discover him, and they just let him leave. Like, once he's thawed out, he's like, I gotta go. And then he walks out of the tent, and the scientists are just like, this is a marvel in science. And they just don't do anything. A man just came back to life after they thawed him out of a giant block of ice. Again, very comedic visual that's supposed to be treated 100% seriously in this movie, because this movie's tone is confused as all hell. But yeah, he gets out, and then this information gets back to the president, as well as the Red Skull and his crew. So the Red Skull makes some calls to assassins who look like a bunch of like pretty people out of like a fashion catalog. Like every time they show these people, it's usually like young girls and young guys with sunglasses and like designer clothes on with machine guns. But the president also makes a call to a close friend of his who's a scientist, and he tells him that this Captain America that he remembers from when he was a kid is now running around and he needs to go save him. So the scientist guy, played by Ned Beatty, hops into a pickup truck and is driving to go find Captain America in, I don't know, the backwoods of Canada is what it looks like. For all I know, they probably filmed it in Canada. It's cheap to film there. Film 101, if you're a low-budget movie and you want to find somewhere that's easy and cheap to film in, go to Canada or go to various parts of Europe like Romania. But Ned Beatty in a pickup truck is rolling around in these backwoods, and he finds Captain America being shot at by the assassins. So Cap jumps into the truck, they speed off out of there, and this reveals one of Captain America's greatest powers. He then lies to Ned Beatty saying he feels sick, gets out of the car, Ned Beatty goes to help him, and then he steals the truck and speeds off.
Please pull over the car. I am going to get sick.
Are you okay? Yeah. Hold it. No, wait. Don't leave me out here.
Truly, Captain America's greatest power, the ability to lie about a stomach bug and then make a yoink with someone's car. Once he gets back to America, he ends up on a beach and discovers that things are totally different, and I love how their way of showing that things are different is some teenage kid asks him if he's got smokes on him, and then he just runs away.
Hey! Hey, bud. Get a cigarette?
There are so many shots in this film that look like something out of a fucking comedy movie, and the fact that they didn't intend for it to be that just makes it 10 times funnier. Anyway, Cap runs back to his girlfriend, who's supposed to be super old now, and even though she says that he was her one and only, she's now married to someone else, and they had a daughter. And, okay, not only are the mother and daughter played by the same person,
Bernie!
Hey, back off!
all they did was just put her in a gray wig and some very, very minor makeup to make her look older. And just like I said with Olivia Hussey's character in The Ice Cream Man, it would have been more authentic if they just casted a real old person to play the older version of this character.
Oh my God.
They have it that, because the Red Skull sends the assassins to kill this girlfriend and her new husband. They get killed off, so now Captain America has to watch over the daughter. Ultimately, the Red Skull's plan was to kidnap the president and brainwash him so that they could take over, and they end up doing that, and they have the president being held captive in Rome. So Captain America and the daughter end up getting wind of this, and they go to Rome, and this is when Captain America does the same maneuver again, and it works.
Sharon, could you pull over for a minute? I think I'm gonna be sick.
Are you okay?
Captain America sucks in this movie. They really did the man dirty. Like, you know, the scenes where he's fighting off Nazis, yeah, sure, that's what the man was known for. But here, like, this scene and the scene earlier with Ned Beatty, the fact that they used this twice in the movie is already pretty stupid. But it makes Captain America look like a dick. He tricks these people, takes advantage of their trust, and then steals their car, and then leaves them abandoned. He leaves Ned Beatty in the middle of the backwoods of Canada or whatever, and he leaves this poor girl in Rome. Well, it's a good thing she ends up catching up with him in the next scene, because then he's talking to some locals, and he can't speak a lick of Italian, and thankfully she shows up, and she knows how to speak it.
Speak English? I was wondering, do you know anything about the people that used to...
Buongiorno. Mi dispiace disturbare.
Dovete attraversare il cancello.
But then there's this huge car chase. The assassins are chasing after Cap and the daughter. So eventually they come across where the president is being held. There's a big fight scene. And this third act climax with these fights, they're fucking insane, man. There's like lots of quick cuts and cutting back and forth between different people. The daughter is fighting an assassin lady. Captain America is fighting the Red Skull. The president is fighting an assassin of some kind. The editing was so sporadic and so quick, it was reminding me of Getaway. It was that hard to keep track of. Ultimately, the Red Skull ends up getting pushed off of a ledge to his death. And there are several scenes where assassins go like flying off of buildings and either landing in the water or they don't show them landing. The weirdest thing about this movie is easily its ending. And that's saying something because this movie has lots of weird shit going on in it, but there's a part where there's an assassin lady with a machine gun shooting at Captain America. He throws his shield, and then we can only assume that it either fucking damaged her head, gave her severe brain damage, or took her head clean off, because then it just, like, you know, flies right toward her, she turns around, huh? And then it, like, shows the shield zooming into the camera.
It's up.
And that's where the movie ends. That's basically where it stops. And it's like, okay, that's a fucking way to end a movie. Overall, is this the worst superhero movie we've ever done for Blockbusters? I don't know, man. I don't know if I can go that far. It's bad, but I was more bored at stuff like Elektra and more frustrated at movies like Blade Trinity. Like, movies like this and Catwoman are so bad that I actually kind of recommend people watch them just to know how bad they are. I don't know, man, especially compared to the recent wave of bad superhero movies we've been getting. Like, you look at this compared to Madam Web. Madam Web and Morbius and even before that with like Fan Four Stick and shit like that, those movies were trying to be cool and they were just really lame. This, on the other hand, leaned into all of the tropes that the original comics were about, and it comes off really silly because everyone treats it so seriously. I know I've been referencing this all throughout the review, but it's like, you look at something like Naked Gun or Airplane, those movies are funny because everyone treats the silly shit around them so seriously. And that's pretty much the same vibe here, except it wasn't meant to be funny. Now, in comparison to something like Supergirl, which I would say this is definitely more in the same vein of, because they're both movies that tried to appeal to superheroes and comic book fans, but ultimately didn't. This one has worse production value compared to Supergirl. Although Supergirl did have that stupid scene with the invisible monster because they didn't want to make a giant animatronic or stop motion or whatever. But otherwise, this one has worse production value. In terms of entertainment value, I would say it's a little bit more funny bad than Supergirl, which only had that in small doses. This one, it's pretty consistent with the weird, stupid shit going on with bad performances, people just mugging and hamming it up. I mean, this is a movie called Captain America, and Captain America in this movie is one of the lamest superheroes of all time. Not only does he do little to nothing aside from getting strapped with a rocket, and occasionally he throws his disc around and takes out some fucking Nazis, but really, this movie's version of Captain America sucks. Like, his best ability is to lie and trick people that he's sick so that they pull over the car so that he could steal it from them. This is the lamest fucking Captain America I've ever seen. If you want to see a good Captain America movie, I'd recommend the 2011 movie and Winter Soldier. Those are way better Captain America movies compared to this. I heard that the 70s version was also pretty bad, but it's probably going to be a while until I can find a copy of that. Once I do, I probably will do a video on it, but I don't know if I'm going to do it right away, because after watching this, yeah, I think I definitely need a break from the bad superhero movies. So that does it for Blockbuster Show in July. Look forward to next month where we're going to be doing 3 more movie reviews as always. And don't want to spoil too much of what we got in store because once again we got plenty of other bad movies to talk about. But until then guys, I'm Am Sykes of the Blockbuster Show and we will see you guys in the next video.